Hey, what's up there, YouTubers? Edgemans and Joe coming to you guys today with some M13 spoilers. So this is the first set of spoilers that we have and that I'm going to be covering on camera. I have my laptop here where I'm going to be taking a look at the cards, and I'll pull them up right beside me so you guys can see what we're talking about. I'm not going to do a lot of talking. I'm going to leave it to you guys to kind of discuss what you think about the cards and I don't know what promising things that you have. That you would expect the cards to do, or combos, stuff like that. Any speculations that you guys may have about the cards. But we have a lot of stuff that we're going to be talking about today. Mythics, Planeswalkers, reprints, and stuff like that as far as the cards that we're looking at. So the first card that we have is Nicolbolas, Planeswalker. So it's nice to see this card back. I know a lot of you guys that bought the dual decks, you're happy if you held on to your Nicolbolas and didn't sell it or trade it away or something like that. But it's nice that for once they had a dual deck where something later down the line was able to be played in standard. So it's nice because I actually still have my Nicolbolas from the dual deck. So I'm going to try and play it in some sort of stuff like Grixis or maybe 4-color control or something like that. So pretty promising with Nicolbolas. Next we have Scorching Spear. So it is a 5-cost instant, deals 4 damage to target player and 1 damage to each creature that player controls. So the real use that I think of this card is probably limited in being able to board wipe your opponent if they have a lot of mana dweebs, stuff like that. A lot of just 1 toughness creatures. So could be good, could be bad, depends on the situation really. Next we have Zathrit Gorgon, if I'm pronouncing that correctly. I'm probably not because I butcher the cards all the time. But it's a 3/6 for 6. It has Death Touch, which is awesome because for limited, and I'm going to keep on talking about it because a lot of people watch these spoilers to prepare for pre-releases and stuff like that. But having Death Touch and it's a 3/6 for 6, it's going to be a really great blocker. And your opponent's creatures, unless they have flying or some sort of unblockable, they aren't really going to be able to swing in and do a whole lot. Also, with the ability for 3 mana to generic and 1 black tap, and you can put petrification counters on creatures, they gain defender so they can't swing. They become colorless artifacts in addition to their other types, and they can't activate their activated abilities. So I think it's great for a card. It's really going to gum up the game, and it's not going to let your opponent get in that alpha attack or anything like that. So I think the Gorgon is really awesome. So next we have Servant of Nepharos. So it is a 3-drop 3/1, and it has Exalted. So I'm actually really happy that Exalted is back. So whenever a creature you control attacks alone, that creature gets +1/+1 until the end of the turn. So if this creature swings in, it's going to be a 4/2. If another one of your creatures attacks, it's going to have +1/+1 if they're attacking alone, that is. So Servant of Nepharos, actually pretty good, pretty limited playable. So next we have Archaeomancer. So it is a 1/2 for 4 mana. Whenever Archaeomancer enters the battlefield, return target instant or sorcery card from your graveyard to your hand. So the real place where I see this card actually isn't even in standard or limited. It's more EDH bound, which is, I guess if you want to say it, casual, because there's not really too many tournaments unless it's something local where you can play EDH. But with Archaeomancer, you're able to get back tutors and back-breaking instants and sorceries that you may have in your EDH deck that you already used, or, I don't know, you milled away with something like the Mimeoplasm or something like that. But Archaeomancer, I think, is actually pretty promising for EDH play, but other than that, I don't really see it in limited or in standard play, just because it's kind of janky, so to say, because it's a 4-drop. So you're going to have to put in that amount of mana into it, and it's only going to be a 1/2, so you don't really get much out of it other than getting something back. But next we have Arbor Elf. So when I saw this card, it kind of made my heart kind of drop, just because the Land of War Elves isn't going to be around anymore. So it's going to suck for any ramp players, just because you're going to have to work around Addison's Pilgrim and some of the other ramp cards that aren't as good as Land of War Elves. But for mono green, it's still going to be good. It's a 1-drop 1/1 and untaps a tapped forest. So I mean, it essentially does the same thing for mono green players but it's really going to make it hard for ramp players that are going to be splashing in a lot of different colors. So, I don't know. We'll see. We'll see what comes about of it. So, next we have Primordial Hydra. So, this is another reprint. It's a 0/0 for X amount of mana and 2 green. Enters the battlefield with X amount of +1/+1 counters on it, and at the beginning of your upkeep, double the number of +1/+1 counters on Primordial Hydra. If it has 10 or more, it gains Trample. So, this card, I think, limited bound, if anything. Standard play, it's not really going to be played that much in Standard. Also, EDH, it becomes pretty good late game if you want to just get a really bulky creature that's going to be doubling in power and toughness each turn. So, I think Primordial Hydra is really promising for stuff like that. In Limited, if you're able to get it out in a couple of turns, it's going to have Trample, and it's going to be pretty huge. So, if your opponent can't deal with it with removal, Primordial Hydra is going to be pretty big and pretty backbreaking, so for Limited, keep an eye out for it. The next card we have is Predatory Rampage, so it is a 5 cost, 3 generic, and 2 green. Creatures you control get +3/+3 until the end of the turn. Each creature your opponent controls blocks this turn if able. So, this card I think is actually really good. I mean, it depends on how you use it. If you're able to get a lot of creatures out before turn like 5 when you're actually able to use this card, it becomes really good just because all of your creatures are going to be 3 power and toughness stronger, and your opponent's creatures are going to have to block them. So chances are it's going to screw up the game for your opponent. So I actually think this card's pretty promising. Next we have Scorching Spear. So it is a 2-drop instant, deals 3 damage to target creature or players. So this is going to be the replacement for Incinerate, and it's kind of surprising that they're dumbing down some of the cards that we play with nowadays. So stuff like Wolfear Avenger isn't going to be able to, it is going to be able to regenerate as opposed to Incinerate, which would restrict it from regenerating. So that's the only thing that kind of sucks about Scorching Spear, is just that little bit of text that would say that they can't regenerate, but I don't know, I guess they're trying to change up the game. Next we have Flames of the Firebrand, so it is a 3-cost sorcery, and it deals 3 damage divided as you choose among 1, 2, or 3 target creatures and or players. So the real thing that I think this card resembles is Arc Trail, just because Arc Trail was able to divide 2 damage to 1 creature or player and 1 damage to another creature or player. So with Flames of the Firebrand, you're able to get rid of, essentially for 3 mana, 3 1/1s, which would be effective for decks like Control, where they're going to be making tokens with Lingering Souls, something like that. So it would be kind of useful for red deck wins and red decks that have like some excessive amount of red mana and like to use removal, but Flames of the Firebrand I guess would be closely compared to Arc Trail, if anything. Next we have Firewing Phoenix, so it is a 4/2 for 4. It has flying and for 4 mana, 1 generic and 3 red. You can return it from your graveyard to your hand. So it reoccurs, it's not horrible. Obviously you're going to have to put in a decent bit of mana if you're going to be like chump blocking with it or blocking to trade creatures, but if you're able to keep on getting it back to your hand and then the following turn play it, it could be pretty annoying for your opponent in a limited game. Next we have Dragon Hatchling, so it is a 0/1 for 2. It has flying and also fire breathing, so for every 1 red mana that you put into it, it gets +1/+0 until the end of the turn. So not much to say about it. Next we have Vampire Nocturnus, so it is a 3/3 for 4, 1 generic and 3 black. So you play with the top card of your library revealed, and as long as the top card is black, Vampire Nocturnus and other vampire creatures you control get +2/+1 and have flying. So I think this is what's going to really push decks like Vampires, Tribal. It's going to push it forward, and it's going to be really fun to play. Obviously it's going to restrict you from playing red as a as big of a source, but Vampire Nocturnus is really awesome. I like that they're trying to push Tribal again, and it's gonna make things interesting for limited play, especially whenever you play like sealed deck. People are gonna try and make some combinations to play vampires, and if they pull Vampire Nocturnus, so I think it's a really fun card. It's a pretty balanced card. 3/3 for 4. The next card that we have here, again, was a dumbing down of what we saw in M12, but it's a clone. So I was so sad when I saw this card because it's a 4-drop, and what it is it's going to replace Phantasmal Image for us. So all of your hopes and dreams of copying up your opponent's legendary creatures are going to be pretty much destroyed, because 4 mana to get rid of just one legendary creature is going to be ridiculous. It's not going to be as effective as it was before, but I guess whenever Phyrexian Metamorph rotates out, this is going to be the only option that we have, and well, also whenever Phantasmal Image rotates out, but seeing Clone again was kind of depressing in my eyes. But another reprint that actually is pretty awesome is Captain of the Watch. So it is a 3/3 for 6. It has a Vigilance, and other soldier creatures you control get +1/+1 and have Vigilance. So also whenever it comes out, it's going to create 3 1/1 white soldier creature tokens. And the thing that I could closely match this card to would be Geist Honored Monk, I guess, because it's going to be creating tokens. For limited, this card is great. It's absolutely amazing as a 6-drop, just because you're going to get a lot of creatures out there. They're going to have their Anthem effect out there with Captain of the Watch, and they're going to have Vigilance. Vigilance is really powerful in limited. Also, EDH, this card is great, but I'm sure most players that play EDH already have a copy of this card if they're playing some kind of a token deck with white. But awesome card, and it's going to be fun to play with in limited. Next, we have another reprint, so Garrett Primal Hunter. We saw him in M12, so it's really awesome that he's back. He saw some really awesome play in decks like Wolf Run, and perhaps you'll see some more play in future decks to come, especially with Return to Ravnica coming out. So it's pretty promising to see what decks we could build in the future with Garrett Primal Hunter, just because he's an awesome 5-drop Planeswalker. Also, we saw a reprint of Challenger the Firebrand here in the spoilers. So it's a 4-drop 3 loyalty. It pings creatures that lets you copy up instants and sorceries, and with the ultimate's going to be where it's really at as far as abilities go. So it's going to deal 6 damage to each of up to 6 target creatures and or players. So if you're able to get the ultimate off, it's going to be really awesome. But if not, then I don't know. I don't think it's really that worth playing. It hasn't really seen any standard play, but it could change. Any card's playability could change in the future. So don't hold me to that critiquing of this not being that great of a card. Also, we have Jace Memory Adept, which I thought is really awesome. I really like Jace Memory Adept for control, and I actually do use him in standard play. So he's a 5-drop, 4 loyalty. He can draw you cards, he can mill for 10, and if you get him to his ultimate, he can make players draw 20 cards. So it's always nice to see Jace in the core sets. And the last card that we're talking about here today is Serra Avatar. So it is a 7-drop, and it's also a reprint that I might add. 7-drop, 4 generic, 3 white, power and toughness equal to your life total, and if it gets put into the graveyard from anywhere, shuffle it into its owner's library. So I think that's nice. It gets shuffled back in. Also, in limited, if you're able to get this out without taking very much damage, this is going to be a powerhouse, and it's just going to absolutely wreck your opponent if they're not able to get rid of it somehow. Serra Avatar is just crazy, and it's really nice to see this as a reprint, and especially a mythic as well. But I actually don't have the image of it because the image that was provided on here on the website was really blurry, so I figured I would just use the original picture of it. But Serra Avatar is really promising, and possibly for standard play, people might even try to reanimate it or do something fun with that. So hopefully we see Serra Avatar seeing some serious play. But that about does it for all of the M13 spoilers that we have so far. I'm going to be bringing you more of them in separate segments and separate videos, and I'm going to pull them up on camera and show you guys the images. But until then, guys, remember to like, favorite, and subscribe for more daily Magic the Gathering content.